The black Bentley moved through Chicago like a shadow with teeth. Armored, silent, untouchable. Damiano Rizzo sat in the back seat, his face carved from stone, his suit worth more than most people earned in a year. At 38, he didn't just run the city. He owned it. Every street, every corner, every whispered deal made in the dark. Police radios went quiet when his convoy passed. City officials looked the other way. Judges ruled in his favor without being asked. This was power. Real power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. Damiano glanced at his phone. A single message glowed on the screen. Tonight the council votes. No mistakes. He didn't reply. He never did. A nod from Damiano Rizzo could end wars. A single word could erase a man from existence. His driver kept his eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel, never daring to look back. No one looked Damiano in the eye unless he allowed it. The car turned toward the mansion district, where marble gates and old money lived behind walls topped with cameras. Where a bride was waiting. If you're already hooked, this is just the beginning. Keep reading because what Damiano sees at the next red light will change everything. Serena Valenti sat beside him in the Bentley, her couture wedding dress folded carefully in garment bags in the trunk. Her diamond engagement ring caught the streetlights, flashing like a warning. She wasn't nervous. Serena Valenti didn't do nervous. After tonight, the northern routes are ours, she said, her voice smooth and businesslike. Judge Moreno will rule in our favor by Friday. The shipping contracts finalize next week. Damiano gave a slight nod. That was all she needed. Serena smiled, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. After tonight, no one can challenge us. This wasn't love. This was an alliance. A merger. Two empires joining hands to control everything from the docks to the courthouses. Damiano had learned long ago that love was a weakness. A liability. Something that could be used against you. So he chose power instead. He chose Serena Valenti, daughter of the Valenti family, a woman as cold and calculated as he was. No feelings. No complications. Just business dressed up in a white gown and called a wedding. The car slowed. A red light ahead. Serena was still talking about territorial agreements and council votes, but Damiano wasn't listening anymore. His eyes were on the crosswalk. Ordinary people filled the crosswalk. Office workers heading home, students with backpacks, delivery drivers checking their phones. People who lived normal lives. People who didn't know the man watching them from behind bulletproof glass had the power to destroy their world with a single phone call. Damiano watched them absently, his mind already calculating tomorrow's meeting, when something made his entire body go rigid. A woman was crossing the street. She moved slowly, carefully, pushing a double stroller in front of her. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked exhausted. She looked like she hadn't slept in months. But even from a distance, even with her head down, even after 15 months of trying to forget, Damiano knew that face. Elena Hart, the only woman he'd ever loved. The woman he'd abandoned exactly 15 months ago. The woman he told himself he'd erased from his life. His hands gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles went white. The first visible loss of control he'd shown in years. The double stroller. Two babies. One dressed in blue, one in pink. Damiano's mind did the math instantly. The babies looked about 6 or 7 months old. He'd left Elena 15 months ago. The timing was exact. Perfect. Devastating. Elena paused in the middle of the crosswalk when one of the babies started fussing. She bent down, adjusting the blanket, whispering something soft. The baby quieted immediately. Then, as if sensing they were being watched, one of the babies turned. Damiano's heart stopped. The child had his eyes. Exactly his eyes. The same steel gray color that ran through the Rizzo bloodline like a signature. There was no question, no doubt. Those were his children. Elena continued walking, disappearing into the crowd on the other side of the street. She never looked up, never saw the armored Bentley. Never knew the most powerful man in Chicago was watching her with his world cracking down the middle. Damiano. Serena's voice cut through the fog in his mind. The light's green. Your driver is waiting. Damiano blinked. Cars behind them were honking. His security detail was glancing back through the rearview mirrors, confused by his hesitation. Serena studied his face, her eyes sharp and assessing. You're trembling, she said, her tone somewhere between curiosity and irritation. Who was that woman? Damiano forced his face back to stone. Forced his voice to stay flat and cold. "A memory," he said. Nothing more. But his hands were still shaking. And for the first time in his life, Damiano Rizzo told a lie that tasted like blood. Because he was terrified. The Bentley moved forward. Green light. Traffic flowing. The city returning to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Damiano sat perfectly still, his face a mask of control, but inside, his mind was screaming. Elena. The babies. The timing. Those eyes. He'd spent 15 months convincing himself that walking away had been the right choice. The noble choice. The only way to keep her safe. And now he knew. She'd been pregnant when he left. Or she'd found out right after. And she'd carried his children alone. Raised them alone. While he sat in this bulletproof car beside a woman he didn't love, planning a wedding that meant nothing. Serena was watching him. He could feel it. "You're not yourself," she said, her voice sharp. "What happened back there?" Damiano didn't answer. He couldn't. If he opened his mouth, the truth might come pouring out, and then everything he'd built would collapse. Serena pressed harder. "Damiano, talk to me." He turned to look at her, his eyes cold as winter. "I said it was nothing." Serena held his gaze for a moment, then looked away. She was smart enough to know when to stop pushing. But she wasn't smart enough to know she'd already lost. Damiano pulled out his phone and typed a message to Rafael Costa, his right-hand man. The only person he'd trusted in this entire city. The message was simple. Find Elena Hart. Quietly. Now. He hit send. The light from the screen reflected in his eyes, and for just a second, Damiano Rizzo looked like a man who'd seen a ghost. Because he had. Rafael Costa answered on the first ring. He always did. "Boss," Rafe's voice was steady, controlled. He'd been with Damiano for 20 years. There was nothing that could shake him. Or so Damiano thought. "Elena Hart," Damiano said, his voice low and dangerous. "I need everything. Address. Finances. Medical history. Employment. And the children. I want to know about the children." There was a pause on the other end. Too long. Rafe never paused. "Boss," Rafe said slowly, carefully, like a man walking through a minefield. "You won't like what you find." Damiano's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask if I'd like it. I asked you to find it." Another pause. Then Rafe's voice dropped even lower. "There's something I should have told you," he said. "Something I did. When you walked away from her." Damiano felt ice slide down his spine. "What did you do, Rafe?" Rafe exhaled, the sound heavy with regret. "Give me until dawn. I'll bring you everything. The file. The truth. All of it." "What did you do?" "Dawn, boss," Rafe said quietly. "You'll understand when you see it." The call ended. Damiano stared at the phone in his hand, his mind racing through 100 possibilities, each one worse than the last. Rafe knew something. Something he'd hidden for 15 months. And whatever it was, it had to do with Elena. Damiano cancelled every appearance scheduled for his wedding night. No explanation. No apology. Serena would be furious. The families would talk. The council would question his priorities. He didn't care. Because for the first time in 15 months, Damiano Rizzo had a purpose that wasn't about power. It was about the woman he'd abandoned. And the children who had his eyes. On the other side of the city, Elena Hart was dragging a double stroller up the broken front steps of her apartment building. No elevator. There was never an elevator in the places she could afford to rent. One step at a time. Her arms shook from exhaustion. Her back ached, but she didn't stop. Stopping wasn't an option when two tiny lives depended entirely on her. Noah fussed in his seat, his little face scrunching up, ready to cry. Elena paused, crouched down, and whispered soft sounds until he settled. She pressed a kiss to his forehead, then to Nina's. "Almost there, babies," she whispered. Almost home. Home was a one-bedroom apartment on the 5th floor. Small, worn, but clean. Elena pushed through the door and the familiar scent of second-hand furniture and baby powder welcomed her. The crib she'd repainted white. The mismatched blankets she'd bought from garage sales. The formula she measured out like gold because every dollar mattered. She carefully lifted Noah out of the stroller, then Nina, and placed them in the crib. They immediately found each other's hands in their sleep, tiny fingers weaving together. Elena stood there for a long moment, watching them breathe. These were her children, her world, the only thing that mattered. She glanced at her phone sitting on the counter. The screen was dark, but she could still see the contact labeled simply, D blocked. Deleted. but never forgotten. A letter sat on the kitchen table. Final notice. Hospital debt collection. Alina's hands tightened into fists. She'd been in debt since the day the twins were born. Premature delivery. NICU. Weeks of medical care. The bills had piled up faster than she could count. $112,000. A number so big it didn't even feel real anymore. But it was real, and the hospital wanted their money. Elena looked back at the twins, sleeping peacefully, unaware their mother was drowning. "They won't take you," she whispered. "I don't care what I have to do. They won't take you from me." She changed into her scrubs. Her shift at the hospital started in an hour. Night shift. 12 hours. 6 days a week. She worked nights so she could afford childcare during the day. So she could see the twins for a few hours before collapsing into sleep. This was her life now. Endless. Exhausting. Alone. Elena grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Outside her window, a black car idled too long in the street below. Someone was watching, but Elena didn't notice. She was too tired to notice anything anymore. Elena handed the twins to Mrs. Chen, the 70-year-old neighbor who lived at the end of the hall. The only person in this city Elena trusted. "Thank you," Elena whispered, pressing a few bills into the old woman's hand. Money she couldn't afford to give. But Mrs. Chen never asked for more than she needed. "Go, child," Mrs. Chen said gently. "I'll keep them safe." Elena kissed No's forehead, then Nina's, and stepped out into the cold Chicago night. The hospital was a 40-minute bus ride away. She'd make it just in time for her shift. As she walked toward the bus stop, her mind drifted back. It always did. She'd been orphaned at 3. Car accident. No family. No one to take her in. The orphanage had taught her that love was a luxury. That survival was the first and only lesson. At 14, she'd been adopted. She thought she'd finally found a home. But her adoptive father taught her that some things were worse than loneliness. She ran away on a rainy night. Lived on the streets. Did whatever she had to do to survive. Then, at 25, she got a job as a bartender at an upscale nightclub. That was where she met him. Damiano Rizzo walked into that club like a king entering his own kingdom. Everyone lowered their heads. Everyone except Elena. Maybe that was why he noticed her. 8 months. That was how long they had together. 8 months of secret meetings. Of stolen nights. Of feeling, for the first time in her life, like someone actually saw her. Damiano told her he'd protect her. That no one would ever hurt her again. And she believed him. She believed every word. Then one night, he came to her apartment with eyes as cold as ice. "We're done," he said. "No explanation. No room for argument. You don't belong in my world. Loving me will only get you killed." He turned his back and walked away. Elena stood there, watching the door close, feeling like someone had reached into her chest and ripped her heart out. 2 weeks later, she found out she was pregnant. She tried to find him. Went to the club. They said she was banned. Called his number. Blocked. Wrote letters. No reply. It was like she'd never existed in his life at all. 9 months of pregnancy. Alone. Elena cried until she had no tears left. Then she learned how not to cry. Premature labor at 34 weeks. Alone in the emergency room with no one to hold her hand. Noah was born with fragile lungs. 3 weeks in an incubator. Elena sat beside him 18 hours a day, praying to a God she wasn't even sure existed. But Noah survived. And so did Nina. And now, looking at them every night before she left for work, Elena knew all the suffering had been worth it. She stepped onto the bus, found a seat in the back, and stared out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Damiano Rizzo was living his life. Powerful. Untouchable. Probably married by now. He'd forgotten her, but she would never forget him. Because every time she looked at Noah and Nina, she saw his face. Dawn broke over the city, pale and cold. Damiano Rizzo hadn't slept. He sat in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at Chicago waking up below him. At exactly 6 a.m., there was a knock at the door. "Come in," Damiano said, his voice flat. Rafael Costa stepped inside, a thick file in his hands. His face was grim, older, like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Damiano didn't look at him. He just held out his hand. "Give it to me." Rafe set the file on the desk and took a step back, standing perfectly still like a soldier awaiting execution. Damiano opened the first page. And every line he read felt like a knife driving into his chest. Current address, studio apartment, South Side. 5th floor. No elevator. No security. One of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago. A place where even Damiano's men didn't go after dark. Damiano's jaw clenched. He turned the page. Current employment. Night shift nurse, Cook County Hospital. Salary. $38,000 per year. $38,000. A number so small it was an insult. Barely enough to cover rent and food, let alone medical bills. She worked 12 hours, 6 nights a week, while he lived in a mansion on a hill. Damiano turned to the next page and his breath caught. Hospital debt. $112,000. From delivery and NICU care. He read the number again. Then again. $112,000. To him, that was nothing. Less than nothing. A single dinner at a luxury restaurant. But to Elena, it was a lifetime she'd never escape. His hands shook as he turned to the next page. Children. Noah D. Hart, male, 7 months. Premature birth at 34 weeks. NICU stay, 21 days. Nina Hart, female, 7 months. Healthy. Damiano stopped breathing. Noah D. Hart. The middle initial was his. She'd given their son his name. After everything. After he'd abandoned her. After he'd broken her heart and walked away without looking back. She still gave their son his name. Damiano didn't know what he was supposed to feel. Gratitude. Guilt. Pain. Maybe all of it. Tangled together into something he couldn't untangle. Boss. Rafe's voice was quiet. Lower than usual. Damiano looked up, his eyes cold and dangerous. There's more, Rafe said. Damiano gestured for him to continue. Rafe drew a deep breath, then said the words that would change everything. She delivered alone. At 34 weeks. No one was with her. No family. No friends. No one. Damiano stood so fast his chair tipped backward and crashed to the floor. What? Rafe's voice was steady, but his eyes were filled with regret. The medical records show Noah struggled from the moment he was born. He spent 3 weeks in intensive care. The nurses remembered Elena. They said she refused to leave his side. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She just sat there, praying her son would survive. Damiano turned his back, braced both hands on the window frame, and bowed his head. His body shook as he tried to hold the rage inside. She had no one, he said, his voice barely a whisper. No one, Rafe confirmed. The room sank into silence. Finally, Damiano turned back. His eyes were ice, but his voice trembled. Protect her. 24 hours. 7 days. Watch every movement. Don't let her know. Rafe nodded. Someone's been on her since last night, boss. Damiano sat down slowly, picked up the file again, and turned to the last page. A photograph. Taken from a distance. Elena walking down the street, the double stroller in front of her. She was thinner than she'd been 15 months ago. Shadows under her eyes. But she was still beautiful. That strength was still there. That quiet resilience he'd once loved with a kind of obsession. Damiano reached out and touched the photograph, his finger tracing the outline of her face. Why didn't you come to me? He whispered. It was the question he didn't have an answer to. But he would. Soon. 3 days later, Damiano's phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. Every instinct in his body went on alert. He answered without saying a word. The voice on the other end made his blood turn to ice. Rizzo. It's been a long time. Victor Kane. The name hit Damiano like a punch to the gut. Kane was the mafia boss who controlled the north side of Chicago. Damiano's sworn enemy for 2 decades. The man who'd threatened 15 months ago to kill any woman who dared to love him. The reason Damiano had walked away from Elena in the first place. And now Kane was calling, his voice dripping with triumph. Why so quiet, Rizzo? Kane sneered. Not happy to hear from me? Damiano said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Kane laughed. I'll admit, you hid it well. A woman and 2 children. How long did you think you could keep that buried? Damiano's hand tightened around the phone, his knuckles white. My men tailed your security detail, Kane continued, his voice like venom. Those idiots don't know how to stay invisible. They've been swarming around a miserable apartment building on the south side. And I wondered, what could possibly matter that much to the great Damiano Rizzo? He paused, letting the words sink in. Turns out it's a nurse. A tired little thing with 2 babies. Twins who look a lot like you, Rizzo. Especially the boy. Damiano felt rage explode in his chest like fire. He wanted to reach through the phone and tear Kane apart. wanted to put a gun to his head and pull the trigger. But he didn't let emotion take control. He was Damiano Rizzo. He never let an enemy see weakness. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice cold as death. Kane's tone shifted, turning serious. "Deadly. Hand her over. The woman and the children. If you don't, I'll take them myself. And I guarantee the way I take them won't be pleasant." Damiano laughed. A hard, empty laugh with no humor in it. "Listen to me, Kane. If you or anyone in your crew dares to touch even a single hair on their heads, I'll burn down everything you've built. I'll kill your family one by one, starting with the ones you love most. And when I get to you, I'll make sure you beg to die." Silence held for a few seconds. Then Kane laughed. Loud, triumphant. "So Damiano Rizzo finally has a weakness. I've been waiting for this for 20 years. He paused, his voice turning vicious. "I won't rush. I'll wait for the right moment. And when you least expect it, I'll take the most important thing you have. Just like your father took from me." The call ended. Damiano slammed the phone onto the desk and let out a roar of fury. He swept his arm across the desktop, sending everything crashing to the floor. Then he stopped, drew a deep breath, forced himself to calm down. He grabbed his phone and called Rafe. "Double the men protecting Elena. 24/7, no gaps. And prepare for war." Rafe took the order without question. But when the call ended, Damiano knew it wasn't enough. Protection from a distance couldn't guarantee safety. Kane was a snake. He'd find an opening, and when he struck, it might be too late. Damiano needed to get close to Elena. He needed to move her and the children somewhere safe. Somewhere he could control. But first, he needed to see her. Even if she screamed in his face. Even if she threw him out. Even if she hated him. He had to see her. Because this wasn't about him anymore. This was about the survival of the children he'd never held in his arms. That night, Damiano drove himself to Cook County Hospital. No convoy. No security. Just him and a gun under his jacket. He parked in the shadows of the lot, staring through the windshield at the brightly lit building where Elena was working. She was in there, trying to survive, trying to keep her children safe. Not knowing danger was circling closer every second. Damiano sat in the darkness, waiting. Preparing himself for the moment he'd been running from for 15 months. At 2 a.m., the hospital doors opened. Elena stepped outside. 12 hours of exhaustion showed in every step. But she still walked quickly, head down, keys already in her hand. Damiano got out of the car. He moved through the parking lot like a ghost, positioning himself beside her beat-up Honda Civic. Elena was 10 feet away when she saw him. She stopped. Her survival instincts kicked in instantly. Her hand dove into her coat pocket and came out with a can of pepper spray, raised and ready. "Don't move," she said, her voice sharp and cold. "I'll spray if you take one more step." Damiano stepped into the light. Elena's breath caught. That face. Those eyes. Those sharp, brutal angles. She would never forget them. No matter how hard she tried. "Damiano," she whispered, his name like poison on her tongue. The pepper spray was still raised. But her hand started to shake. Not from fear. From rage. From pain. From 15 months of trying to erase this man from her life. And now he was standing here in front of her as if he had the right. "Elena," Damiano said, his voice rougher than she remembered. "I need to talk to you." Elena lowered the pepper spray slowly. Not because she trusted him. But because she knew if Damiano Rizzo wanted to hurt her, he would have done it long ago. She laughed. A bitter, broken sound with no humor in it. 15 months, she said, her voice trembling with fury. 15 months without a word. Without a message. Without a single sign that you were alive or dead. And now you want to talk? Damiano didn't answer. He just stood there, looking at her like a man staring at something he'd lost and could never get back. Then he spoke, his voice thick and strangled. "I know about the children. I know they're mine." Elena felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. She'd known this day would come. She'd prepared herself for it. But she still wasn't ready. She was silent for a long moment, swallowing the pain rising in her chest. Then she looked straight into his eyes. "They're my children," she said, each word sharp as a blade. "You lost the right to call them yours the night you walked away without even looking back." Each word hit Damiano like a bullet. He didn't flinch. He stood there and took it. Because he knew he deserved it. "Elena," he said, urgency sharpening his tone. "You're in danger. Someone knows about you and the children. Someone very dangerous. I need to Elena cut him off, her voice like ice. I don't need you to protect me. I survived 15 months without you. I was pregnant alone, gave birth alone, raised them alone. I didn't need you then. And I sure as hell don't need you now. She turned her back, reaching for the car door. But Damiano stepped forward and put his hand on the door, stopping her. Elena, please. His voice sounded like a plea. A sound Elena had never heard from Damiano Rizzo in her life. She turned back to face him, her eyes burning with anger and hurt. You have 5 minutes, she said. Right here, right now. Talk. Damiano looked at her, and for the first time in 15 months, he felt a thread of hope. She was giving him 5 minutes. More than he deserved. He took a deep breath. And began. If this story has you hooked, drop a comment and let me know, should Elena hear him out, or walk away forever? The truth Damiano reveals next will change everything.